Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and today we're back with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel solo mode. So we have one last solo mode mission to go through. Land of the Tinyi. The Tinyi style fighters have long strived to harmonize with the Chi that moves through the earth and continues to improve themselves to reach the ultimate state of being. They call this state flawless perfection. Now what's interesting about this is the previous single story mode also kind of focused around Earth-based characters, and I assume this is going to be Earth-based characters. And so I almost wonder if it isn't a case that these two stories are based on two expansion packs that would have been released at the same time for Yu-Gi-Oh! At some point when they were trying to heavily emphasize Earth-based cards. Not that Earth-based cards really matter that much in Yu-Gi-Oh! You almost always are going to have decks with just all kinds of different characters, unless you're trying for a strategy that really synergizes specifically around Earth, and I haven't seen any of that yet. Now, Chi is this thought that there is a magical energy that flows through all nature and human beings. It's called Ki in Japanese, Ki. It's semi-believed, I would imagine, throughout many Asian countries. It's convenient and a nice thought, certainly. You have like Chi healers that can try to give some credibility to the nonsense they're doing by saying Chi exists and that they can unblock the flow of Chi and heal somebody. You have monks who are trying to build themselves as being more energetic by saying they can do miracles with Chi, or that they can do karate moves with Chi. You have actual warriors in the past who would have said that they could use Chi to become stronger or punch through rocks. Of course, none of it stands up to actual scientific method, and in all fairness, in the West we also believed in things like humors or fairies and things like that. And if anything, I would just say that the idea of Chi and most of the mythology of the East is not written down as much as it's just passed on from person to person. So there's less dogmatic constraint to it. There is no effectively Bible that defines what Chi is and what it can do and what it can't do. So there's no real need for Asians in their day-to-day life to stringently actually believe in Chi, but they can certainly also just allow other people to believe in it, which has left their countries with a lot of legacy people, older people, still believing in it. It's also worth pointing out that a lot of Asian countries were hundreds of years not backwards, but behind as far as just a great enlightenment compared to some of the Western countries. And that's what the Western countries would call it, as far as just the discovery of atom science, the scientific method, the discovery of gravity, things like that, and things like that being taught as being important are the things that would throw the idea of Chi out the window. Now, ironically, if you start getting into like quantum physics, you could try to redefine Chi as being some incredibly weak force that is on the quantum level, but anything that small really would not be able to do the things that people claim they can do with Chi, which mostly boils down to, I'm going to heal your cancer, and then the people that don't randomly go into remission die, so there's a survivorship bias. Or I'm going to punch a rock and break it, and the act of punching a rock is more physics and magic tricks than anything else. But yeah, this is a video game, so we didn't really need to go into that much. Now, I started to play this, and just as I started to go through the first scenario, my power went out. So it says completed because I skipped the rest and we've already acquired the thing, but we'll go with this. Now, in the video game form, the chi, I'm sure, will work completely as expected, and we'll have warriors that are a lot like Avatar: The Last Airbender or Naruto. Naruto uses the phrase chakra, I think, a lot more than they use chi, but it's basically the same idea. It would be nice, certainly, if you could use energy of any sort, any kind of non-corporeal transfer of energy to accomplish great things. But if we could do that, we would make machines to do it, not just send it through fighters. We have electromagnets. Electromagnets can move things magnetically easier than a natural magnet that isn't, that's harder to mine and maintain and make. We have electricity going through wires instead of, I guess the alternate here would be to have people sticking their fingers in outlets and charging things if chi existed. But even in the examples of breaking a rock, a hammer and chisel works way better than punching a rock to break it. And even the game admits that. Sorry, going on a bit of a rant here. In this world, there's a chi that flows naturally through the earth. Yep. And I'm being probably pedantic for no good reason here, because I've totally accepted all the other nonsense worlds and all the other solo stories. Nobody believes that there are wooden robots walking around in the real world, though. Chi divides into countless streams and gather once more. When the streams swell, the chi take the form of a dragon. So we've got energy dragons now. This was called the dragon vein, and some warriors use the chi to form powers and skills at these dragon vein deposits. Now, what's interesting about this, compared to something like Hearthstone, where you do have like a mana that you have to use, or Magic the Gathering, where you have to play lands to tap the lands to get mana to summon something, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was very distinctive as a card game as not really having a currency to play cards. The very first versions of Yu-Gi-Oh! Games, before the rules had really been established, you could summon a 8-star, 10-star, 11-star monster without even tributing. In modern times, with the rules, you can summon up to a 4-star monster without tributing or any kind of cost, really, for most cases. And then you can get up to a 6-star monster by tributing one monster of any star level, really. And you can tribute an 8-star or more for tributing 2 monsters of any star level. At some point, I think in the middle there may have been a thought that to summon a 8-star monster, you would have needed 2 4-stars or 2 cards that added up to 8 stars in some way. But if that happened actually in the card game, it was for an extremely short amount of time. It probably only happened in one of the many card games before the rules really had been established. There's really a long history of Yu-Gi-Oh! Games. Like, I would guess there's probably somewhere around 30 to 50 Yu-Gi-Oh! Games that were released on Game Boys, and then have 4 or 5 on Game Boy, then 4 or 5 on Game Boy Color, 4 or 5 on Game Boy Advance. And a lot of those really weren't even they weren't even following the card rules of the time. which led to, I imagine, a lot of confusion. Some warriors use the chi to form powers and skills at these dragon vein deposits. These disciples are called the Tinyi style. The innermost secret of the Tinmi style, one in harmony with the earth chi and one with the highest physical and spiritual might, is able to reach flawless perfection. So I would assume one of these symbols probably is earth, and then one is probably spiritual power, and one is probably physical power. That would be my guess. That's what these symbols are, and I don't know how you really would translate that into English. This opens up the idea, certainly, that there would be other kinds of veins and other kinds of warriors. Hidden in the dragon vein is the greatest power, the great power of nature itself. Tinyi style aims to control the power of the earth without disrupting it, creating a new way for humans to interface with nature. Now, interesting, we're seeing like fire, ice, and other dragons, other than just like spirit dragons or earth dragons. Martial arts in themselves are an interesting story in that they exist at all. And it's an interesting split where you would say in the British imperial times, people were, mostly sailors, were allowed to, in the British Navy, carry swords, and in feudal times before that point, in the Roman and British Empire, swords were held by knights. But at some point in Asian countries, a single law by an emperor, pretty much, is my understanding of it, outlawed the carrying of swords by civilians in, well, I think mostly China and Japan, back when China was secretly in charge of when Japan was secretly in charge of China and running the whole show, which left it so only like the governing bodies, the samurai, had swords, and the peasants had really no weapons, and there were probably very strict punishments for even using scythes and just farming equipment as weapons. So they introduced the idea of karate as learning a martial art, which martial arts I think literally translate to using hand-to-hand combat type fighting, not fighting with a weapon. And so that's where you get this need. Nature, I suppose, bores a vacuum, and so then there was this need for peasants to defend themselves against bad people who had swords without themselves breaking the law of having swords. Whereas in the West, there was perhaps more of a love for swords and weapons, and just a swift eventual jump to gunpowder and guns, which is interesting too, because Chinese people invented gunpowder, but seemingly Westerners were the ones to really adopt it and use it to make weapons and carry around guns in general. And guns certainly more effective than karate. In fact, I don't think I've actually seen any kind of martial art other than perhaps Krav Maga actually succeed against anybody who is armed with anything, just like a butcher knife or anything like that. The advantage and the threat of even just having a large kitchen knife is so much better than years and years of karate. And for the most part, people who do karate are just learning basically a dance. They're showing off doing very strict scheduled actions. That's what most karate in the West that's taught to like kids is it's not it's not really thinking of the modern world in the way a modern person might attack you. Now, Krav Maga, I would say, is the one exception. So if you do want to learn martial arts, I would heavily suggest Krav Maga if you can get a good teacher of it, because that literally is a much more modern martial art designed, I believe, by the Israelis or the Palestinians, one of them, to fight the other. So it was built in modern times as to, here's somebody with an AK-47 pointing at your face. You're probably going to get shot and killed because they have a AK-47 point blank at your face, but we'll give you this suggestion here as to how you could possibly avoid getting shot in the face and disarming that person with the AK-47. Which, that's, if you are in any kind of dangerous scenario, that's probably a scenario you're more likely to be in versus in 2023 running against somebody with a samurai sword. If you see somebody with a samurai sword these days, it's probably a prop samurai sword and very dull, and it's almost certainly not a samurai who's been practicing well enough to actually swing it correctly. There are real karate tournaments, I think probably more in Asian countries, where you actually have karate masters fighting each other and showing off what is effectively wrestling moves with karate elements. But even in that, it is a watered down scenario that they're showing you, because if it were a real fight in a karate tournament, then the people would be killing each other, not just knocking them down and then stopping. And they wouldn't be following rules of any sort. Wow, am I uninterested in this story already? Like, oh, I gotta really sit down and think how I'm gonna handle future solo stories. They are just so boring and just don't matter. Continuing the story here. In the long history of Tinyi, there are tales of ones who reach flawless perfection of the Tinyi. However, these tales are more like legends. However, there have been a few people who have opened the dragon vein and made the step towards perfection. Historical fighters trained endlessly to reach higher levels and pass their teachings down to their students. Currently, there are 2 young people that obtained the power to manipulate chi through training. So even in this story, there's only 2 people that actually can manipulate chi. One is the boy who specializes in fist fighting. I suppose, now that I think about it, chi in particular, I think was really only used in Naruto by the character Brock Lee, who had no ability to actually manipulate chakra as, I guess, a different type of mystical energy. So Brock Lee solely fought using karate moves or kung fu moves or something like that, one of those martial arts. And if anything, he was looked down upon because he couldn't do any of the other more magical chakra actions that all the other Naruto kids could do. I recently tried to watch the original Naruto cartoon series, and boy is it a waste of time. Like, I would say the last 75% of the cartoon is all filler arc and not worth watching, really. There's definitely a specific point where the original 3 friends break up, and after that it's all filler arc, and then later Naruto Shippuden series try to continue the story after that point, after all that filler. And now they've made several other Boruto and sequels. I'm not sure any of it really matters. I really did try to get into it, but yeah, did not work. Also, in fairness, I didn't really care about Naruto back when I would have been young enough to actually be justified watching it. One is a boy who specializes in fist fighting. During his training, he successfully harmonized with Tinyi spirit Adhara, the Earth Chi, by injecting the Chi into his fist. The other is a girl, his sister, in apprenticeship. Interesting phrase. She manipulated the flow of Chi using a fan to manifest dragons. Interesting. Which that sounds more like a wind Chi than an earth Chi. They were water Chi, Tinya spirit Shathana, fire Chi, Tinya spirit Mapura, and wind Chi, Tinya spirit Nahata. So the water, fire, and wind spirits all came out of Chi coming out of the earth. Which, yeah, doesn't really sound like they're explaining it quite well. It seems like they probably are saying earth, or trying to say earth as in all of nature, as in a planet that has water and fire and air in it. Fire from volcanoes, I guess. Instead of earth as in the physical dirt and ground beneath your feet. She is regarded as the closest to flawless protection in her perfection. I keep wanting to say protection in her generation due to her ability to control 3 types of Chi at once. These young talents appear in the same place at the same time and brought new hope to the history of the Tinyi style. Now you would expect that there would be some other kind of style, like several different ninja academies with several different fighting styles, if you're going to have it named Tinyi style. And weirdly, they're making it out like to achieve flawless perfection, you would need to be able to manipulate the 4 base elements, earth, wind, fire, together. Which, at some level, probably should be mentioned that while it works good in video games as a concept, there is nothing special and no reason to put earth, wind, and fire on the same levels. That really is going back in the West to something like alchemy, where you think these are natural elements on the same level, in the same category, things that exist because the other things exist. When earth is basically just dirt, wind exists because there's an imbalance in pressures. Hot air wants to balance itself out to colder spots to naturalize the energy in it, and as hot air tries to balance it out, it creates wind. Fire is just a natural progression of converting mostly organic materials into carbon, things that are burnable. There are plenty of things that do not burn, and there are a few things that burn that don't end up just producing carbon, but for the most part, fire wouldn't even exist on this planet if it weren't for the right balance of oxygen and nitrogen in the atmosphere. And interesting, trees would fall when historically, uh, before the atmosphere changed to being more oxygen based, and they would just sit there. There were no, uh, I'm talking millions of years ago, there were no ways for the trees to burn and start on fire, so they would just stay there, and then there were no ways for any kind of germs or organisms that hadn't evolved yet to break down the organic material of the wood. So for thousands of years, trees would grow, fall over, then trees would grow again. There was no process to rot them, and we know this because there was a massive fossil record of trees and that had eventually were able to be burned and turned into oil and being broken down. And then there's nothing before that fossil record showing any element of trees. Mostly they would just become petrified. That's where we get the petrified wood from, is that was the process that could mostly get rid of them. Man, I am just rambling way too much. Oh, focus on the story. And we've got a whole nother scenario story here. Looks like we have an interesting, almost wrestling monster here, giving us the secondary reward. I assume that we will need to open the gate. The orally passed down and recorded history of the Tinyi style. Well, it would have to be orally passed down, then recorded. It is a guide to flawless perfection and training methods that many fighters adopted to reach a higher level. But that is not all. It also tells fragmented tales of conflict over the interpretation of Tinyi. So they actually have a Bible of sorts, religious text. There once was a man in the Tinyi style who trained his body to the extreme. I guess this is going to be our devil character. His fist is an extension of his bear-like tough body that tried to overpower by use of force rather than achieving harmony with chi. He was called a berserker for his mind that was not trained as well as his body. One day the berserker found unrivaled Tinyi, a separate path from flawless perfection. A path of unrivaled power achieved by absorbing the earth chi as a source of power instead of harmonizing with it. Which, how do you do one versus the other? Who knows? His philosophy did not hesitate to deplete the power of chi if it meant he would reach higher powers. Deemed a heretic, the berserker was soon banished, with no one to follow his path. That is when mention of the berserker vanished from the history of Tinyi. Tinyi style believes that the dragon vein is not a tool for strength, but a bridge between humankind and nature, which still seems like they're using it to learn to fight and do nothing else. Unrivaled Tinyi was evidently denounced and used as an example of discipline and importance of connecting with nature. We must not repeat the mistakes made by the berserker. To carry the Tinyi style name was to adopt its philosophy as well, but the darkness from the past suddenly returned in front of these children. He had the body that was chiseled like a rock, his hair coiling like snakes, and from his head grew 2 horns. His arms and shoulders were covered in scales, truly a body with a dragon's might. His body was emanating with a sinister aura. Again, we're getting a better story here where we have protagonist and antagonist characters at least, which leaves us to believe there will be at least 2 styles of decks, a Tinyi style and an unrivaled power style of cards. A true form of the Berserker. Your flawless perfection is no match against my unrivaled Tinyi. Was this about revenge or simply another challenge? It's impossible to tell which. Perhaps it was both. The Berserker returned after years worth more than an entire human lifetime. That's a weird translation. He returned from the past to prove once and for all which of them is superior. The Berserker's return meant the unrivaled Tinyu was once more. To protect the Dragon Vein from misuse, the Tinyu must fight. The boy and girl launch a flurry of attacks to the Berserker, who is known as a legend. But he was not deterred despite the few hundred strikes they dealt. The strikes did not faze the Berserker, their attacks merely bounced off his fortified body. Doesn't really feel like the fairest of fights, though, if the unrivaled perfection characters were just kids and just starting to learn how to do things, and unrivaled Tinyi, a Berserker character, had been practicing it for hundreds of years, it seems like. One of the things that I don't think is really portrayed, and this is one of the problems I think in general, is that the grass is always greener on the other side, and people see places like Japan and they see the best parts of Japan and think it's so cool, and they see like karate and people doing karate. It's kind of worth pointing out though that not just Japan but Asia, karate is kind of often an extension of almost like a boarding school process. Now, I'm not talking about kids that are in public school doing karate as one of their extracurricular activities they're forced to do. I'm talking about more when a kid is given up to a monastery to become a monk, in many Asian countries permanently. Sometimes they, in a lot of Asian countries, they do like a year as a monk to bring good fortune to their family temporarily as a kid. But the ones that are 16, 17, 18 and older that become monks permanently are basically getting rejected from society, getting rejected from their family. It's very close to sending your kids off to boarding school and never thinking about them again. It's not just being a monk per se, also being a sumo wrestler, same idea. So the karate aspect around these institutions that have been created, institutions often of abandoning family members out of your family, out of society, into this different system, creates a need for them to justify their own existence. So monks have to justify themselves as being lucky and offering prayers and sales. In reality, a lot of monks in Asian countries are really just organized gangs. They're begging / demanding money to pray over a place and give you a paper charm for $100. And there is a religious aspect around that, certainly, that keeps people supporting that aspect. Same is kind of true with sumo wrestling, in that sumo wrestling is expensive tickets, I'm sure, somewhat expensive to go see, and then they have signing things where they actually don't sell signed pictures of themselves, but instead use ink on their hands and just slap their handprint on the pictures of themselves or on a piece of paper, so making them celebrities. Celebrity in general is a similar scam, certainly, where people in all around the world pay a large amount of money for that. But certainly when you add the extra mystical religious aspect to it, and the karate and doing karate demonstrations, it gives a lot more prestige than just being beggars on the street. Which, in fairness, in the West, maybe it's worse that you have people just living on the street begging, getting sicker and sicker, and having horrible wounds, horrible drug addictions, things like that. There's almost certainly less of that percentage-wise in Asian countries that have institutions like that. You could almost call the support system, if it actually was intended and more honest with what it was. And that's probably the worst part about them, is that there's just not real honesty here. If you want to go to a monk and donate to the monastery because you're giving charity to the poor monk that's maintaining this like monastery, that's fine. But if you think you need to do it to get good luck or for spiritual protection of some sort, that's not really fine. But I should get off my soapbox at this point and actually play the game. Man, I'm really off track today. What makes Tinyi decks unique? Many Tinyi spirit decks, again, the picture probably doesn't make any sense. I'd assume you summon something or you banish something from the graveyard. Many Tinyi spirit monsters have the following two effects, which it might be nice if everything with Tinyi in the name always had these two effects, and if that was consistent with all cards. Anything with like a proper bolded name would have the same effects, thus you would immediately know what it does. But that's not the case, certainly. Not every card with Zodiac in it does the same thing, or Tri-Brigade in its name does the same thing. They synergize with each other for the most part, but they do different things. And I'm not sure you really could make a game where every card with Tinyi in it has these two effects. That's why they're saying many instead of not all. The effect is that special summons the card from the hand when you do not have any effect monsters on the field. When you have a monster that is not an effect monster on the field, such as a Monk of Tinyi, it does something, but I'm not sure what. Utilize these effects to combo off your main to your main means of attack, like the Link monsters and Synchro monsters. So if anything, trying to even understand what this is saying, it seems like your main attackers aren't even going to be Tinyi cards. Let's see what the tutorial puts us through. All monsters lose attack and defense equal to their level of rank times 3. That seems like a weird starting card. Link summon Draco Masters of Tinyi and win the duel this turn. Activate the effect of Tinyi Spirit Ashuna in your hand and special summon it. So, basic effect here would be we don't have any effect monsters, so we can special summon it. The other option they won't even show me, so go ahead and put that in attack position just there. Use Tinyi Spirit Ashuna as a link material to link summon Monk of Tinyi, since apparently this is going to be 0 instead of its original. What was its original? There was a button they were doing. Let's see. Here, you have to click this. It was originally 1600. Right. So we can now link summon this. Now activate Ashuna from the graveyard. with this effect special summon Smethana from your deck. Do I want this card pointing to this card though? Use 2 monsters as link materials to link summon Shaman of the Tinyi. Now what's weird about this is this card is just affecting things so much that it really isn't educating me well as to what these cards would really feel like in play, since all of their attack is being severely reduced. I skipped a sentence there. Let's discard Tinyi Spirit Mapura from your hand and activate the effect of Shaman of Tinyi. This effect will special summon 1 war monster from your graveyard. Now we use the 2 link materials to link summon Draco Masters of Tinyi. Seems kind of weird that we're going around in circles to do this, but whatever. That seems like it didn't matter. Well, this one, I guess, has a link level of 2, so it counts as 2 materials, and this counts as only 1. Link summon successful. If there are no effect monsters in your monster zone, Draco Masters of Tinyi can select a number of effect monsters on your opponent's fields equal to the number of non-effect monsters that exist in your graveyard and your monster zones. In the position, face-up position, currently you have Monk of Tinyi in your graveyard. Let's activate the effect of Draco Masters of the Tinyi and destroy your opponent's monsters. Big mouthful there. So, a shockingly large amount of link summoning going there in this tutorial. I really wasn't expecting that, considering how they described it. They definitely made it seem like you were going to be activating a lot more effects for cards from the hand or the graveyard. So I guess the move now is to just say pause now if you want to read this, and let's play this loner deck and see how well this really plays in an actual game. It still does feel like these new expansions are centering around a lot of link summoning characters, which, yeah, I think link summoning is probably the newest strategy to actually be added. Let's see. So we'll start with this, and we'll keep an eye on the percentages. The percentages seem somewhat high here. Okay. Tribute 1/1 more warm. I think the move here is probably to do well. It would be kind of weird to bring out Shaman of Tinyi. One of the problems, though, you also run into is that in link summoning, it says link 1. And so then you end up wanting to link summon a second time for link 2. Activate that. I don't think it particularly matters who I pick. So this is link 2, which means I can either take this link 3 or this link 3. I could get the Berserker of Tinyi or Draco. We'll go with the safety choice and go with that one. But this definitely highlights where the problems can run into. Let's see if this is a good one to activate. Is that you'll just end up link summoning and link summoning and link summoning over and over and over again. Let's go ahead and just send the normal card in the graveyard. That's probably a fine move. No, that worked out terribly. Yep. Perhaps I could see limiting the number of extra cards in your deck down to like 5 instead of 15. And I'd give you less options certainly, but it would also prevent scenarios where you're just link summoning and link summoning and link summoning forever. And that is, at the core of it, the issue that many players have, is that you'll go against an opponent and they'll spend 20 minutes link summoning things or doing some other action that's incredibly slow. And the field they're using is showing off the pendulum summon marks, which I think pendulum summoning came right before link summoning did. So, yeah, it seems to me I've failed. Let's see. What can we do? What are our options? I'm looking for something that would say you could special summon it from the graveyard, but none of them are going to say that, are they? Let's just hit retry. Might as well reset. I've already talked way too much in this episode, and now when I'm getting down to actually just focusing on trying to play the game, it's once again going to just come down to random luck. There really needs to be a middle ground here. Interesting. But yeah, there needs to be a middle ground between the 3-step tutorial, here's how you learn the concept of these cards, very basically, and then a potential 10-20 round of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Where the cards are completely randomized. I don't know if I want to destroy that yet. He's done basically the same thing as I have done. see what doing this does. Seemingly nothing. Okay. So if I special summon this, can I then toss this and then special summon? So if nothing happens here, we're gonna have to just start over again. In the best case scenario, I destroy everything and I have this one trap card. But he has 4 cards in his hand, I have 1. I don't understand what the deal is, though, as to why they want to get this 2000 attack normal card in your hand, but it, in all fairness, 2000 attack for a 4-star normal card is probably the best you would ever get. I doubt they would ever make a 2100, and they tend not to make things in the 50s as far as attack or health. They never really did anything in the 1-digit place, which justifiably would say if you were going to remake Yu-Gi-Oh! You could divide all attacks and defenses by 10. Okay, so I can special summon this here, which then maybe lets me do this with this, which I don't know if that really does anything different than just summoning this by default. Which still just puts me in a bad position. It's not quite give up yet, but I'm gonna have to retry again. Now, it is noticeable that in the past 5 solo stories, I haven't run into any challenge at all. So, it would be close to the point where it would start to make sense. And I would say I don't like that these characters, Shaman of the Tinyi and the other guy, are not really effect monsters or normal monsters, so you're only going to be able to see them in the Draco Masters card when they're combined, or in Shaman of the Tinyi, or Monk of the Tinyi, which that's the guy. They don't even have like names in a game that absolutely loves to give names to everything. So not much of a character. This time we're going second. That might be a slight advantage, but I think I'm either getting extremely unlucky here or I'm not understanding this strategy. Whereas I think I've mostly understood all the previous strategies. Okay. When you summon this, you can target one warm type monster in graveyard, except Magnet and Dragon. Okay. So let's discard a worm type monster, except for Magma Dragon, and figure out what we want to do. So it's going to be in defense mode. It should be something big in defense mode. So I would say that's the card to play. Then we need to figure out a way to special summon this. Okay, we just sent one type of worm monster in the graveyard. Let's send this other type. Yeah, the problem here is I couldn't special summon this card. So do I want to destroy these two cards, knowing that one of them might be a counter to an attack? It seems very weird that I might just win this by a good old-fashioned strength battle and just not engage with the link summoning at all. Okay. He thinks that's going to work for him, so I'm going to go ahead and assume it is going to work, even though I don't really understand how. Weirdly, it did seem to work for him. The only thing to hope here is that you would have your opponent run out of cards and run out of options. Okay. Special summon that. Activate this. Tribute this. And guess I'm supposed to add this to my hand. Summon that. Activate this. Go ahead and, I guess, activate this. Doesn't seem like this is working. Okay. Again, I just don't see a reason to... if you can do this, you can just do this and skip that step. Then you can't do anything else. So let me just experiment and attack and see what happens. Ah. Well, we've gone an hour here, mostly because I've talked too much. So I'm gonna just have to say I don't understand that deck at all. It seems incredibly weak. This has been a complaint that I've heard a little bit about as far as Yu-Gi-Oh! In general, but the solo modes in particular, that they often will not really balance the solo mode decks and or seemingly playtest the solo mode decks. So I'm just back to my standard Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck, which almost certainly a guaranteed win. Like, it's gonna be pretty simple. We got a really good starting hand, but the cards in my Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck are designed well. The deck is balanced well, so almost every starting hand is a good starting hand. So I have like 3 cards there at the moment. Let's see. Let's go through all the steps here before I do anything else. For this card. Go ahead and activate this card, attaching to this card. So we've just attached 2 of these cards through 2 different effects, bringing that up to 4100 attack, leaving me in a decent position to just do that and stay with that. That gives me 3 cards in this spot to banish. Allowing me to summon this, which then lets me summon this using 3, the link 3 of that, and 1 of those to be the 4th link material to activate that. Activate its ability, which grabs the attack value of this, bringing it up to 5300. So in 1 turn, even though I can't even attack here, I already have a 1 turn kill next turn. You'd have to clear the board. Plus we have options here of destroying any face-up cards, which we can take advantage of. Take advantage of that fairly early. And then we can toss that to negate that spell card. And that very possibly is all the things he possibly expected. And there's nothing more that really needs to be done here. I could certainly activate this, toss 3 more cards into the graveyard. Sure, let's do it. Just to show off the power of the Zodiac Tri-Brigade, you toss this one to add another thing to the graveyard. You activate its ability to toss this one into the graveyard, activating its ability. Then you add this back to your hand, and you've gone full circle, which then lets you summon it, which then lets you activate it, which lets you then summon the 4 cost character. here. Then you activate his ability to banish this card, giving you double the amount of health you really would need to win. So unless he could play something directly from the hand, there's no way he would win. And I could goof around certainly and just like attack with this, then I could attack with this. I don't think I could attack with all three of these though, or we can just win. Which just really highlights what's the point of learning these new cards when it's just so difficult and it's unlikely that they're even playable by the percentages we're seeing in ranked play. Like, at a certain level, maybe just getting rid of the duels altogether in solo mode makes some sense, and instead there should just be a practice mode where you can make any deck and make any kind of opponent's deck and just play against them at your own whim instead of hiding rewards that aren't actually even that important. A lot of these rewards are literally just a secondary currency that don't matter. I already have enough secondary currency to unlock this gate, so I guess there might have been a scenario where I couldn't have gotten to this next duel. That may have happened once in the entirety of all the solo modes that I've struggled to do something and couldn't open a gate, but it seems so unbalanced that you always will have enough resources. Alright, pause now I guess, and see if you learn anything here. Maybe it would help me if I skimmed over this at least. Yang Xing creation seems to be it. Use Tinya spirit monsters that excel special summon in conjunction with fusion summons by invocation that is added to your hand by effect triggered by successfully summoning Alistair the Invoker to strategically deploy monsters. This will give me this icon, and this would just give me legacy packs. So we'll give it a couple attempts on this duel, and hopefully I can actually win here with the deck they give me. Otherwise, I will just use Zodiac Tri-Brigade again. Okay. Add one Alistair Invoker from your deck to your hand. That seems like a smart move, since that seems to be the main character. From your hand to the graveyard, just fusion summon one target. Invocation deck. So am I supposed to summon this and get an invocation card? I think that's the move. I don't think I'm supposed to discard it. Okay. Then activate this spell to either summon this or summon this. We'll go with this one by tossing this and tossing this. It's a Chariot card. And this is a... I'd say this is not a ritual card. Ritual cards are blue. This is just a standard fusion purple card. But it does give me the feeling potentially that this would have been a card around the racing change of the rules that one of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Spin-offs focused way too much on. Okay. So, I guess you activate this and we put Alistair the Invoker back in your deck. on your hand. Interesting. So I can do that again, I guess, next turn. Well, that's a good start. That's a much better start as a strategy. And it doesn't look like there's as much Link Summon focus in this deck. Let's not activate this trap yet. Okay. Do I want to negate this? Special summon. I'd say no. Okay, so now I'm gonna activate this effect. Give this an extra 1,000. And do nothing else. I'm being asked to do a lot of things. Okay. Now I think he's getting desperate, so we'll toss that. So I'm effectively reducing his options. I may have just ruined his options. Meanwhile, I probably should have activated that at some point. Can I put this face down? Now that would have been a face-up defense card. Face down. The super polymerization though is not working at the moment. Okay, well, we'll just attack. And that looks like that's all we can do. I'm clicking on the wrong place somewhere here and it's making that sound effect, which I very much prefer that you don't potentially click just a few pixels to the right and getting noisy sound effect. Generally, I don't want any of this artistic distraction to also be visual and audio distraction. It's already visually distracting with a little bit with the flags waving back and forth, but for the most part you eventually learn just to ignore it. Okay. Changing that field spell seemed to do nothing for me. Oh, it feels like we're potentially just gonna have a grind here, and getting past this 2600 defense is gonna be difficult, certainly. It's gonna be card for card. Whatever he draws, if it's something, versus whatever I draw if it's something. Let's see how this works. Send one to the graveyard. I'm gonna just send the 1-star card here. That didn't do anything. See, no link summon here for just like weirdly. I need a Tinyi monster to link summon this, so then I could jump to this point, or we need different attributes, which I guess these are both light cards, so that's the problem there. If I had the dark card, I could link summon this one, I think, or this one, which would get me into this one. And so while I'm not being able to play, my advantage is slipping through my fingers. So I just got wrecked by a good old-fashioned, just strong defensive card. That's all there was to it. And the only thing I really could have done is earlier I could have put this quick play spell on the field to make the opponent think that I had some kind of trap card set, but that's not likely to affect the behavior of an AI character. I guess he sent back this card where he would have otherwise sent this card. Yeah, and on that I will say it does kind of feel like there was a much better chance with this loner deck, which we really haven't even been looking at the loner decks. It does feel like playing with the Alistair card, which we do have 3 of those. I better understood the strategy and could have actually succeeded better. I needed to get more Alistair cards, and very possibly I played the cards poorly and discarded too many cards based off of the use of what card was I even playing? I don't know, it was, I think this one, yeah. This ability to discard cards had me discard a couple of cards that probably shouldn't have done. But I don't, for time's sake, I don't think it's worth trying a second time, even though I will say there is a good chance I would win the second time. Of course, by the time I get around to actually playing these a second time, I'll probably have forgotten everything. I'm gonna straight up just play that one card. Not a particularly good draw for the Zodiac Tri-Brigade, but we'll see what happens. Let the opponent exhaust his cards and exhaust his options. It is worth pointing out, though, that let's stop that from happening. In a real game, this would be considerably slower to summon and activate so many effects. The game is speeding everything up because the AI knows what it's doing. Here we go. Not still the best cards, but as long as he can't stop the process, if he can't counter anything, which I don't think his decks really have effect nullifying abilities. We should be good. Here we go. This may actually protect him. But oh shoot, it does, doesn't it? Okay. We can work with that still. That was probably a bad position to put that in, but whatever. So having to activate a lot here. And I almost never sacrifice my character like that. Okay. Let's go ahead and banish this. And I'm just going to banish this card. And then I'm going to activate this. And banish this. And see if we can banish that card. Okay. Is that going to quite win it in one turn for me? No. But it's good enough. And I really had to stretch there. And maybe I even stumbled on a slightly better strategy that I haven't been using in my Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck, which, in all fairness, there almost certainly are even better strategies that I haven't learned. That I definitely was not playing particularly well when I first built the Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck from a online list. Like, I didn't understand the cards. And I imagine I still don't understand the cards completely. And some of that just comes straight down to the fact that I just don't want to pay that much attention to Yu-Gi-Oh! And try and become an expert in cards. Unfortunately, if this was a deck building game where expansions were very rare and infrequent, becoming an expert in the cards you play and the deck you build would make a lot more sense. But because it's a trading card game where they are constantly adding more and more cards, which is constantly changing the meta as far as how you should play cards, there's just not a lot of room, or not a lot of time, I suppose is the better phrase to use, to learn a deck before it becomes obsolete. Activate this trap. Summon our second one of these. Whoops. I think I screwed up there and destroyed my own card. All I've played so far is just Tri-Brigade cards. I haven't done the Zodiac cards at all. So, even if he was able to survive, I've got a whole nother trick up my sleeve. Let's see how well that works. We can do this. Now it's asking me if I want to select one more material. In this case, I don't, because that would take this 19. Go ahead and banish that. That adds some safety. Activate this for even more attack, not that we really need it. Keep going forward with this one. And this is really just showing off at this point. Activate that effect to wreck that. And then for protection, you would just summon this one that can directly attack, just in case he can summon something else. But what would he be able to summon, really? It's a new turn, so I can activate this also, which can just then discard 4 of the banished cards back. So, showing off quite a bit there. It's showing off when you're playing against AI. It's not showing off, it's being cautious when you're playing against real people, because they may have in that one card something that could ruin your strategy. So we didn't succeed with the loner deck on the easy, we didn't succeed on the medium. Let's now see if we could succeed on the hard. Don't let your guard down. If your opponent has only normal monsters on the field, they may be looking for an opportunity to take advantage of Tinyi Spirit, monsters that can activate effects in the hand or graveyard, that can activate effects in the hand or graveyard, or Phantasm and Spiral trap cards that can be activated from the hand when Umi is present. Okay. Make sure to pay attention to the situation outside the field. The Adventurer token, special summoned by right of Armiser, is also a normal monster, so it can be combined with the support of Tinyi cards as well as cards related to Adventurer tokens. Make sure you're fully prepared to face your opponent. So, we're getting some hints there. But yeah, I don't know if you would have to potentially just go through every single card and try and read the effects and cycle through it. Okay. Alright, this has been a long one. I'm going to pause my recording and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Yeah. And what does it really say when even I have to take a break in the middle of these episodes? But yeah. Without going through the deck and just looking at every single card, you really are left with just these hints. So we're looking for adventure tokens and we're looking for Phantasm Spiral, and mostly what they're telling me to do is just watch out for traps the opponent's going to play more than what to do to actually win myself. Like, I don't think I'm a particularly big fan around the idea of learning by being beaten down, which weirdly is kind of the way they teach like sumo wrestling and karate in general. And that's kind of the thuggish nature of a lot of dojos, I will say, is that it is kind of gang-like in that the most revered, the person that's strongest, has the most training, is teaching the underlings by beating them down, pushing them down, deflecting their blows instead of like building them up. There is perhaps too much of a violent mentality inside the martial arts, despite, particularly in the West, where martial arts are really sold more as a mentality thing. Ironically, martial arts are often sold in parts of the United States as being somehow tied into a more Christian mindfulness of discipline as a concept, or self-reliance, ideologies that aren't really solely Christian in base, but you will literally find Christian karate dojos where they are praying to a Judeo-Christian god before each training session. So far it seems like the opponent is playing the exact same way, figuring out tricks to do massive amounts of damage. That was something new to activate out of the graveyard. So basically the instructions said, watch out for that minefield. Okay, I've observed the minefield. There are 5 cards in here. I suspect at least one of these can be activated in the graveyard, destroying one monster my opponent controls. We have a card that has the name and is treated as Umi on the field, which there's actually quite a few of those. And then we have a trap card, and then we have very strong card link summoned and 2 weaker cards link summoned. Best I can figure, I should activate this, which activated the trap. Which then leaves me to do this, and do this. And that's all I can do. So I pretty much lost. Unless one of these trap cards synergizes in some way that I just don't realize. And see, here's what would be helpful, certainly as far as educating the player in a solo mode, is if there was a log here that you could be pointed to more, as far as here's where your mistake was, and here's what you should have done instead. Or even a slight hint. But at best, all you could do is through this tiny little scroll log, just like look at every card. And more often than not, I imagine this is where I failed, just by drawing 5 bad cards. Like I didn't have a chance, and that doesn't feel fun. And that level of unfun should not happen in solo mode. I can understand it happening in ranked play if you have a bad deck, but I didn't build this deck. This is a loner deck. Or if your opponent has just a overpowering deck and should be ranked higher, or you should be ranked lower. That's the idea of ranked play. I think ranked playing games tend not to actually work as well as people would hope. Okay. We can special summon this. We could cannot attack unless you have an adventure token. So I think the start would be just to do this. Maybe I should have activated this earlier, because I kind of need a Tinny card, I think. Let's try to see what happens here. Seems like there should be a way to summon an adventure token. Yeah, you summon an adventure token at the end of the battle phase. And I guess we'll see how far we can get with this. Sending back a trap card. It's probably a mistake. Going in circles like that's probably a mistake too. Apparently can't link summon anything. Oh, so this card just does not work at all until you have an adventure token. And this card doesn't work until you have an adventure token, so I am struggling to figure out how to get the adventure tokens first and foremost. Like, this being at 2300 attack is fine. Well, not super fine. Well, I think I'm thoroughly convinced at this point and don't really feel the need to go any further. That none of these decks that they're handing me make enough sense. And I'm not seeing really great strategies that the opponent is playing that I am missing. I'm not learning from the opponent, obviously. Like, special summon this, or special summon this. Tinny. I don't think it matters one way or the other. This is a very, very tricky deck we're seeing here. My only hope, I guess, would be to do this. Maybe get a little bit more powerful. And yeah, seems like summoning the 3000 attack Berserker is as good of an idea as anything else. And that didn't work. It's ridiculous. And that didn't work. And it didn't work a second time. It's laughable how tricky this is. Like, yeah, we really don't even need to go any further. Obviously, I'm not going to win here. Like, it's gonna play out, and it's gonna summon whatever few more attack points it needs to win in this turn, and then it's going to attack and win. Yeah, and it just does not feel fun to be on the losing side of these kinds of things. Of course, that's a problem with multiplayer games in general, is that ideally I would like to have a collectible card game that is much more single player focused and doesn't really even care about player versus player and adds more content non-stop. Something that would probably be better described as like a gacha game, really, to start with. Where every expansion would not be so much about adding new cards that are just random, but would be about adding specific cards that are actually very interesting, either visually or to play with. You know what? I'm going to cancel that. And I'm going to just skip over and summon this. Yeah, if every couple of weeks, every 2 weeks to 4 weeks, you had 10 or 20 cards that were really nice visually or had an effect, and those were just the new cards added, and then you would have to balance the daily grinding to get gold or gems to earn those cards. I think that would make me happier versus having 10,000 cards, of which probably 8,000 are garbage, as Yu-Gi-Oh's done. Now, the reason why collectible card games are like that, where they want to just make as many cards as possible, is because they're solely making money based on the blind bag loot box concept in the real world of opening card packs. A digital form or a digital first form of a collectible card game doesn't really have to rely on that money and could potentially just rely on microtransactions instead, in the hope they can make the same amount of money or maybe even less money, but not have to actually physically print out cards, and so not take on the extra expense of physically printing out cards. And some of the collectible card games in Japan have tried to do that, where in their Sega style arcades, uh, you will play a digital card game and then you will hit print for an extra fee to physically print the actual card game, the actual cards, and it just has like a printer in it, or perhaps a selection of cards that are in its inventory. The question really would just come down to how far do you want to go with this. And I probably let it go too far, so when this resolves, it may destroy this guy. Zeus at this point is useless, though. He has no attached materials and there isn't a way to reattach materials that are in my deck. So if all of my hard work to get to this point is being destroyed, yep. So my deck, which I can only describe as being incredibly powerful, is struggling there. It really highlights how difficult a loner deck would be to win with. There's just too many tricks, too many traps, too many ways in which you'll just get your creatures destroyed. And if all I can really do is play the best, play the way I would expect to play, and hope it works. Let's see if it actually doesn't end up working that way. Let's take this one instead. Potentially fighting against the entirety of your opponent's graveyard is definitely asking a lot. Think we'll win here, but not 100% certain here. I have spell trap destroyers and I have attack destroyers. Let's see how this works. Then we'll activate that just to see if that triggers something. Actually I shouldn't have summoned that. I'll say. Yeah, that was a mistake. I should have just gone ahead and attacked and seen if I won, and if I didn't win, have the card in my hand to summon if he somehow destroyed and cleared the field. Okay, so we did not win with any of the loner decks. So I can tell you, when I get a daily quest to play 3 games on solo mode, these will be very challenging. But we should just finish the story, get the card back, and move on. Card protector, I guess. Because this has been going nearly 2 hours. The Berserker has walked away. Is that how the story resolves? Neither the fist of the boy infused with the Earth Chi nor the dragon created with the water and wind by the girls stood a chance. It barely made the Berserker flinch, and definitely not enough to defeat it. The battle was complete defeat for the Tinyi style. It wasn't even a battle. It was like swatting away flies to him. But the Berserker could not be let loose, siphoning all the veins. Interesting, it's vein apostrophe space S power. They don't even check the spelling on these, do they? Siphoning the veins powers while using the technique of the Tinyi style. Someone must stand up and defeat the Berserker. The master placed his hopes in the two young kids, which, yeah, the only reason they're young kids instead of like master martial artists who would have spent decades honing their skills is because they want to advertise to kids this game, and they would find that more relatable. Although, in all fairness, for young kids to be this buff or this skilled, they would have had to have been basically raised from birth to with the single obsession of Tinyi style fighting, and had no real childhood or personalities to them, which is probably in part why it's not super easy to assign personalities or write personalities for characters like this. The master is not even shown in this. The master tells the two secrets that have never been spoken of. First, the Berserker's power is that of the Chi of Darkness. Oh, well, so then there should be a Chi of Light. There are lands where anger and vengeance fester and create pools of negative Chi. That is the source of power for the Berserker. If you find that location, you shall find out where to find him. He told them to play of a place regarded as a sacred yet forbidden to the Tinyi. One who truly harmonizes with the dragon vein shall make a step towards flawless perfection. You'd almost think, if this was supposed to be the beginning of like an anime story, that they would have had to travel around the world to find different dragon veins, and that there would be a dragon vein of darkness, dragon vein of light, dragon vein of earth, dragon vein of fire, and that would be part of the narrative. As they would go to different places, they would find other people who can manipulate chi, and they would fight against them and get stronger and work their way up to a berserker. If anything, this does kind of feel like a veiled Shonen Jump pitch. I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually a failed Shonen Jump pitch, in the idea that since Yu-Gi-Oh! At least originally was airing in Shonen Jump, I don't think like Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush is actually in Shonen Jump, though. I think the latest spin-off manga is actually for even younger kids in a younger version of Shonen Jump called something else. Something that would be like the equivalent of Shonen Junior, or Nick Jr. to Nickelodeon. But yeah, I could see each of the solo modes in this game being pitches that were once pitched as a manga and rejected by Shonen Jump, because inherently Shonen Jump only has so many pages that it can dedicate to new content, as it's constantly trying to maintain its audience with Bleach, when Bleach was still airing as a manga in Shonen Jump, or One Piece, which is still airing, but One Piece threatens to actually stop. And like Naruto, I think, was in Shonen Jump, but it wouldn't be now. There really have only been 4 or 5 really long-running successes in Shonen Jump as I think, weekly or monthly magazine. Part of its problem, I would say, for the West is that it doesn't have good distribution, at least in the West, so it's nowhere as popular outside of Japan as it is in Japan. I'm talking too much once again, though. Uh, For you two, as ones who encounter the Chi of Darkness, shall receive higher powers with the manifestation of the Dragon of Light. Soon the students left their master to visit the sacred path place for the Tinyi. They overcame many obstacles. Why are they putting the characters way down here? This is implying that the star effect and fog is going to clear away for a giant dragon. They overcame many obstacles and arrived at the location where they worked together to prove their worth. So they're just skipping over the entire journey arc of the narrative. That would have almost certainly been many episodes of an anime or many issues of a manga. The powerful Chi of Light, Tinya spirit Asuna appeared as a dragon. It was different from any Chi they had controlled before. Yep. Guessed it right there that it was going to be a screen-filling giant dragon. The two do not know the true power of the Berserker yet. When they confront it, the Berserker will perhaps be even stronger than before. Yeah, this looks like a different form. In order to defeat it, they must become stronger by acquiring the power of Asuna Chi of Light. Meaning Asuna is merely the stepping stone to their goal. This is where the two fighters begin the real battle. And this is the end of the story. It's just ridiculous how all these stories just end on these cliffhangers, and clearly not all the solo stories are going to get any more narrative to them. And it's not like with the cards you could tell a story yourself. There are some card games out there that you are designed around the idea of telling a narrative by playing the cards. Something, I guess, somewhat similar to like tarot cards, where you derive meaning from the pictures on the cards, and a lot of meaning from them. But yeah, as far as Konami and Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually trying to tell you an actual story with the cards, it's not going to happen unless these cards sell very well and they make a second run of series for these cards. So we opened up another secret vault, and yes, I could open up 10 packs around this, but it would be absolutely insane to do it. Like, if I can't understand the cards in solo mode, I definitely am not going to be able to understand it building my own deck and playing in ranked. What I'd like to see here, though, I will say, is it'd be real nice if there was a release date on these cards somewhere. It is fairly crazy that in the future you would have to go to some website, type in the name of this card to figure out when it was originally created, when it was originally released. The related cards do make some sense, but noticeably not all cards are related to other cards. Imagine if the 50-60 years of comic books had specifically never been documented, and a Adventure Comics #1 with the first appearance of Superman from like the 1960s, I would say, is when that happened. Maybe actually 1950s. Imagine if there was a possibility of thinking that that came out in 2023 and Superman was just brand new. Championships are apparently still going on, so yep. See if I could bring that up. just as a mention. So they wanted you to cheer for champions in this world championship, and so I just picked a random team. I think I picked this A2 Area 2 Japan, Bogan Japan, and if that's the case, then they ended up in 4th place, whereas in Group A, Area 1 to the Future ended up in 1st place, which is a pretty good bet. Certainly to pick on a Japanese team, since Yu-Gi-Oh! Is very popular in Japan, although the D Latin America team is 1st place in Group B. I'd still call them the underdogs, though, in my suspicion. And you can really just see how many games were played overall. It's a lot. It's like 9 games for every competition. Which that is just not what I was expecting. Nor was I expecting the game to crash like that. So, for the final tournament, A2 seemingly lost against E2. A1 lost against E2. And then C2 defeated D. And then E2 and C2 fought. And E2 won. 6-3 splits everywhere, really, in the tournament. And so my cheer to champion on that was A2, which made it in the top 8 of literally 8 teams. So I guess I have a real knack there, because I picked the absolute worst team at random, which will get me 1 super rare legacy pack ticket, and that's it. Whereas if you had picked E2, you would have gotten legacy pack tickets of ultra rare guaranteed quality, one with a glossy, one with a royal finish, one with just a guaranteed royal, and then 250 players at random would have also gotten 2,000 gems, which isn't really a lot of gems, frankly. And then you have super rare with royal finish and super rare guaranteed, and then glossy finish super rare. So super rares can have royal finishes and glossy finishes. Apparently ultra rares don't seem like they do. Interesting ding sound, I suppose. So yeah, I picked poorly. Increasingly, I will say, for my YouTube channel, I have jumped around a lot of collectible card games, and it is perhaps instilled in me a desire to jump to another new collectible card game if there was one that really would be a good candidate. I doubt there is a good candidate, though. As long as Yu-Gi-Oh! Mostly works for ranked play, it works for my needs when I'm streaming every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as just a distraction game. But yeah, the solo mode is definitely not helping things. There are several of these that still would need some cleanup for Daily Quest. I feel like these solo player challenges that were emulating the experience, in this case this felt like each of these duels were emulating major events of the first spin-off Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series. So you were playing the decks of the main protagonist in the first spin-off anime series, and just being given challenges of different decks. So you'd be given, in this case, hero decks, since hero was the big thing at the beginning of the first spin-off anime Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. And you would be challenging Ancient Gear monsters in this battle, or armored dragons in this battle. And in the first challenge, deck challenge compilation, it was the first anime series, so you were playing Red Eyes, Black Dragon cards, or Gaia the Swift Knight card, I guess, first. There really isn't even a Red Eyes Black Dragon in this deck yet. Yeah. Very early deck that one of the protagonists in the first anime series would play. And you're playing against perfectly ultimate Great Moth characters. Very simplistic deck by modern standards. And yeah, I think this is a better idea. And there are at least 2 other anime series that they could ape that from, too. Of course, what they're really dropping the ball on is just like having a streaming service that would show Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime and being able to just pop that up in the screen and watch the cartoon while you're playing. Get some ad revenue while watching the cartoon, potentially. I imagine there is somebody somewhere streaming Yu-Gi-Oh! On YouTube and Twitch. One would assume that should be Konami, the rightful copyright owners, getting some more hype around that at the very least, if not ad revenue. Because I imagine they are not getting much by just having like Yu-Gi-Oh! On Hulu or Netflix or whatever services they're on as exclusives. But yeah, I will end my yammering at this point. We've done all the solo things, so I've accomplished my goal. I'm not super happy about the experience to accomplish the goal doing all the solo stuff. I'm not super happy about the game seemingly losing connections whenever you just sit idly for a few seconds. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's some links down below in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.